Welcome to my class. I am Pamela Jasmine. Today I am going to teach All Summer in a Day, written by Ray Douglas Bradbury. This is All Summer in a Day is a science fiction. We can call it sci-fi. So a sci-fi is a story in which real and fantastic details are combined. This story is set in the future on the planet Venus. But in the story, Venus is described as completely opposite to what it really is. Venus is really hot, but in the story, it is very cold. Where it rains constantly, continuously, except for 2 hours after every 7 years, the sun appears. So otherwise completely 7 years continuous rain, and once in 7 years the sun appears only for 2 hours. A group of children, school children, are crowding around the window to see the window of their classroom to see the appearance of the sun. All the children are 9 years old and they spent the entire life in this planet Venus. Margot, a weak little girl who has come from the earth 5 years ago. So she could remember, she has experienced the sun and she could remember how the sun is. So all the other children are jealous of Margot and they did not allow Margot to see the sun in Venus. Let's see the story. Ready? Ready. The children are gathered near the window and they are waiting for the appearance of the sun. Ready? They are asking each other, ready? Are you ready? Ready. Now? Soon. Now, is it, does the sun appear now? Then soon. Do the scientists really know? Will it happen today? Will it? They are doubting whether the scientists are very sure, whether they know, whether the scientists know. Will it happen today? Will it? Look, see for yourself. So now you look out and see by yourself. The children press to each other like so many roses. Here, the children are compared to so many roses and so many weeds intermixed, peering out for a look at the hidden sun. They all are looking out of the window to see the hidden sun. It rained. It had been raining for 7 years. Thousands upon thousands of days compounded and filled from one end to the other with rain. With the drum and a gush of water, with the sweet crystal fall of showers, and the concussion of storms so heavy they were tidal waves come over the islands. See, continuously it has been raining for 7 years. It had been raining for 7 years, thousands upon thousands of days compounded together, all the days together. It had been raining from one end to the other with rain throughout the day, night, and all. It has been raining with the drum and gush of water, so full of water. The gush and drum of water sounds and everywhere it was filled with water. With the sweet crystal fall of showers, sometimes the rain appears like sweet crystal showers of water, and the concussion of storms, and sometimes it appears, the rain appeared like damaging of storms. So heavy they were. Sometimes the rain was so heavy, like the tidal waves come over the islands. How the tidal waves come to the islands, like that sometimes. So the rain was in different forms. Sometimes it was so heavy. Sometimes it was light showers like crystals, and sometimes it was like heavy tidal waves coming to the islands. 1,000 forests had been crushed under the rain and grown up 1,000 times to be crushed again. Thousands of forests were under the water, and again thousands of forests came up, but these all forests came up to be underwater. And this was the way of life, a way life was forever on the planet Venus. And this was the schoolroom of the children of the rocket men and women who had come to a reigning world to set up civilization and live out their lives. So this is the life of the children in planet Venus. So this was the way life was forever on the planet Venus. Planet Venus is described as a planet with so much of rain, continuous rain. And this was the schoolroom, and the children are there in the schoolroom. Children of the rocket men and women. Children's parents are described as rocket men and women. So it is not clearly described. They may be the astronomers, or they were the biologists, astrobiologists who study about other planets. They had come here to a reigning world. Venus is described as a reigning world to set up civilization. These people, these rocket men and women came to this planet Venus to set up a civilization of their own and live out their lives. They want to enjoy their lives in another planet. It's stopping. Yes. The children are telling each other, it's stopping. Rain is stopping. Yes. Margot stood apart from them. From these children who could ever remember a time when there wasn't rain. And rain. And Margot was unique. Margot was different from them because the children are of 9 years. And they spent full life in this Venus, and they could not remember because sun appears there only once in 7 years. So now they are 9 years, and sun appeared only 7 years before. So children cannot recollect how the sun is. But Margot is different from them because she has come from Earth before 5 years. So she could remember the sun. They were all 9 years old, and if there had been a day 7 years ago when the sun came out for an hour and showed its face to the stunned world, they could not recall. See, all these children are of 9 years, and there had been a day 7 years ago. That time they were only 2 years. That time when the sun appeared, they were only 2 years. And they could not recall, they could not recollect because they were of 2 years at that time. Sometimes at night she heard them stir in remembrance, and she knew they were dreaming and remembering gold or a yellow crayon or a coin large enough to buy the world with. Margot could hear them recollecting, heard them stir in remembrance. They were they were trying to find out from their memory, and she knew they were dreaming and remembering gold or a yellow crayon or a coin large enough to buy the world. Then she could experience them dreaming and remembering how the sun is. A yellow, they were recollecting a sun as a yellow crayon and large enough to buy or a coin large enough to buy the world. They compare the sun to a large coin, a coin large enough to buy the world. So here we can see the device hyperbole, a coin large enough to buy the world. That is over exaggeration. She knew they thought they remembered a warmness like a blushing in the face, in the body, in the arms and legs and trembling hands. She knew, Margot knew that they were thinking that they were remembering sun as a warmness, like a blushing in the face. We know now when we have high emotions, our face blushes. But that blushing will last only for some time. So like that, they can remember the sun as a blush, blushing in the face, in the body, in the arms and legs and trembling hands. They can remember like that only, or just a sudden feeling in their face, in their arms and throughout the body. But them they always awoke to the tatting drum, the endless shaking down of clear bead necklaces upon the roof. The walk, the gardens, the forest, and their dreams were gone. But they were awakened by the sound of the rain, like a tatting drum, like the sound of a drum. The endless shaking down of clear bead necklaces upon the roof, the beads of a necklace falling on the roof. And the endless shaking down, upon the roof, the walk, the garden, the forest. They can remember all this. Throughout it is raining in different sounds, and their dreams were gone. All day yesterday they had read in class about the sun, but the previous day they were reading everything about the sun in the class. About how like a lemon it was and how hot. They were comparing the sun to a lemon and how hot it is. And they had written small stories or essays or poems about it. Then all the children started writing poems, stories and essays about the sun. I think the sun is a flower that blooms for just 1 hour. Then this is Margot's comment. I think the sun is like a flower and it blooms just 1 hour. That is the comment of Margot about the sun. That was Margot's poem, read in a quiet voice in the still classroom while the rain was falling outside. Margot wrote a poem about the sun. She wrote like this. I think the sun is a flower, blooms for just 1 hour. That was the poem written by Margot about the sun. But read in a quiet voice in the still classroom. She is a very silent child and she just read the poem in a quiet voice while the rain was falling outside. Oh, you wouldn't write that, protested one of the boys. Then one of the boys protested, oh, you are not the person who wrote this. I did, said Margot. I did. Then Margot said, no, I did. I wrote this poem. William, said the teacher. Then the teacher warned William. William was the boy who said that the poem was not written by Margot. But that was yesterday. Now the rain was slackening and the children were crushed in the great thick windows. The poem was written yesterday, the previous day. But today the rain was slackening. Slackening means reducing. And the children were crushed in the great thick windows. All the children are gathered near the window. Where is teacher? She'll be back. Where is the teacher? She'll be back. She would better hurry. We'll miss it. Then children were so eager. They wanted to see the sun. So they are telling each other, the teacher should be come in a hurry. Otherwise, we'll miss the sight of the sun. They turned on themselves like a feverish wheel, all tumbling spokes. Margot stood alone. They turned on themselves like a feverish wheel. They were turning around, all tumbling spokes. Margot stood alone. Margot was standing alone because other children are not mingling with Margot. They may be jealous of her because she has come from the earth only 5 years before. So she has the experience of the sun and its warmth and all. So the other children may be jealous. She was a very frail girl who looked as if she had been lost in the rain for years. And the rain had washed out the blue from her eyes and the red from her mouth and the yellow from her hair. She is a frail child. She is a weak child. She had been to this moon for 5 years. And she looked as if she had lost all her, she had lost everything in the rain. And the rain had washed out the blue color of her eyes. Her eyes became pale. And the red from her mouth and her lip, the redness of her lips are gone. And the yellow from her hair, the yellow color, golden hair became pale because of the rain. The rain has washed all the life from her. She was an old photograph dusted from an album, whitened away, and if she spoke at all, her voice would be a ghost. She became so weak after coming to this planet Venus. So she was compared to an old photograph in an old album, dusted from an album, whitened away. If we take an old album, black and white album, the photograph will look so pale. Like that she looked. And if she spoke at all, her voice would be a ghost. Her voice was frail, like the voice of a ghost. Now she stood separate, staring at the rain and the loud wet world beyond the huge glass. Now she is standing alone, because the other children are very friendly with each other, but they are not very friendly to Margot. She was standing separate from the other children, staring at the rain and the loud wet world beyond the huge glass. They were standing on the other side of the huge glass of the classroom. She was staring outside to see the rain. "What are you looking at?" said William. Margot said nothing. Then William asked her what she was looking at. Then Margot did not answer. "Speak when you are spoken to." William got angry. He was telling, "Why don't you speak when others speak to you?" He gave her a shove. Then William pushed her. Shove means push. But she did not move. Rather, she let herself be moved only by him and nothing else. She did not move. When William pushed her, she did not move. But only William who pushes her and make her move. They edged away from her. They would not look at her. They all went away from her. They did not even look at her. She felt them go away. She understood that they all went away from her. And this was because she would play no games with them in the echoing tunnels of the underground city. Why they kept her away, they kept her separate? Because she did not play any game with her, with them in the echoing tunnels of the underground city. They played games in the tunnels in the underground city. Their sounds echo in the tunnel. But she did not play games with the other children. If they tagged her and ran, she stood blinking at them and did not follow. They tried to involve her in the games. They tag her and run, but she did not follow them. When the class sang songs about happiness and life and games, her lips barely moved. When the whole class sings songs about life, happiness and all, but and games and all, but she never moved her lips. Only when they sang about the sun and the summer did her lips move as she watched the drenched windows. But when they sing about the sun, then she also joined them. She also moves her lips. And then, of course, the biggest crime of all was that she had come here only 5 years ago from Earth, and she remembered the sun and the way the sun was and the sky was when she was 4 in Ohio. What was the crime she did? Why all the other children made her separate? Because she has come to this planet 5 years ago. And see, that was the biggest crime, that she had come here only 5 years ago from the earth, and she remembered the sun and the way the sun was and the sky was when she was 4 in Ohio. Her native place was Ohio. She stayed in Ohio when she was 4 years, and so she could remember everything. She could remember the sun, the sky, and the ways of the sun, everything. That's why the other children made her separate. And they had been on Venus all their lives, and they had been only 2 years old when last the sun came out, and had long since forgotten the color and heat of it and the way it really was. But all the other children had been on Venus throughout their life. And now they are 9 years old, and the sun appeared 7 years ago, and they could not recollect anything. And when the sun appeared for the last time, they were only 2 years old, and they have forgotten the color and heat of it and the way it really was. But Margot remembered. Margot had seen the sun when she was 4 years. So Margot could remember everything. It's like a penny, she said once, eyes closed. Then she said that sun is like a penny, a coin. She described it by closing her eyes. No, it's not, the children cried. Then the children did not agree with her. The children said no. It is like a fire, she said, in the stove. Then she described, sun is like a fire in the stove. You are lying, you don't remember, cried the children. But the children did not agree with her. The children said that she was lying. But she remembered and stood quietly apart from all of them and watched the pattern windows. But she could remember everything. And she stood quietly apart from the other children and watched the patterning windows. Then she watched only the patterning windows, the designed windows. And once, a month ago, she had refused to shower in the school shower rooms and clutched her hands to her ears and over her head, screaming the water mustn't touch her head. Then 1 month ago, she refused to shower. She refused to take bath in the school shower rooms, and she clutched her hands to her ears and over her head. She covered her head and ears with her hand, and she was screaming, and water did not touch her head. She did not let water to touch her head. So after that, dimly, she sensed it. She was different, and they knew her difference and kept away. After that incident, she could understand that she was different from the other children. And even the other children felt the difference, so they kept her away. There was talk that her father and mother were taking her back to earth next year. It seemed vital to her that they do so, though it would mean the loss of thousands of dollars to her family. There was a talk that her parents are coming to take her to the earth back next year, and that is very important to her. And though it would mean the loss of thousands of dollars to her family, to come to this planet Venus and to take her back to the earth is very expensive. Her family had to spend thousands and thousands of dollars, but still her parents are planning to take her back to earth. And so the children hated her for all these reasons of big and little consequence. That's why the children hated her, because her parents are coming to take her back to earth. They hated her pale snow face, her waiting silence, her thinness, and her possible future. They all hated because of so many reasons. What are the reasons? They hated her pale snow face, her waiting silence. She is always silent. She doesn't talk much. Her thinness. She is very thin. And her possible future and her bright future. Her parents are coming to take her back to earth. Get away. The boy gave her another push. What are you waiting for? The boy gave her another push. It must be William. What are you waiting for? Then, for the first time, she turned and looked at him. And what she was waiting for was in her eyes. And she turned and looked at him for the first time. And the answer for his question, what is she waiting for? That is in her eyes. Well, don't wait around here, cried the boy savagely. You won't see anything. Then the boy became very cruel. he said, no, you don't wait here for any more. You are not going to see anything. Her lips moved. Nothing. He cried. It was all a joke, wasn't it? He turned to the other children. Nothing, he cried. And he turned to the other children and said, it was only a joke. He did not want her to see the sun. Nothing happening today, is it? Then the boy remarked, nothing is going to happen today, is it? They all blinked at him and then, understanding, laughed and shook their head. They all blinked at him. They just closed their eyes at him and then they understood and they laughed and they shook their heads. Nothing. They all remarked, nothing. Oh, but Margot whispered, her eyes helpless. But this is the day the scientists predict. They say they know the sun. Then Margot whispered, her eyes helpless. But she was helpless. All the children were united against her. But she told her, this is the day the scientists predicted that the sun. All a joke, said the boy, and seized her roughly. Hey everyone, let's put her in a closet before the teacher comes. Then the boy said that it was only a joke. Then what he did, he just seized her toughly and they all, and hey everyone, let's put her in a closet. He consulted with the other children that he wanted to put her in a closet, in a closed room before the teacher comes. No, said Margot, falling back. Then Margot requested, no, please. But they surged about her, caught her up and bore her, protesting and pleading, and then crying back into a tunnel, a room, a closet, where they slammed and locked the door. What they did? Margot tried to protest, but all the children together, what they did, they surged about her, caught her up. They all caught her and they took hold of her. She was protesting and pleading, but she was crying also. Back into a tunnel. They put her into the tunnel, a room, a closet, where they slammed and locked the door. They locked her in a closet. They stood looking at the door and saw it tremble from her beating and throwing herself against it. Then they just looked at the door and they could see the movements. She was trembling and beating, and she was beating at the door herself against it. With the full body she was hitting the door, but there was no answer. They heard her muffled cries. Then smiling, they turned and went out and back down the tunnel just as the teacher arrived. They could hear her cries, but they could hear her cries, but that lowering sound, but they did not respond. They all went out and back down the tunnel just as the teacher arrived. At that time, the teacher arrived. Ready, children? She glanced at her watch. Yes, said everyone. Are we all here? Yes. The rain slacked still more. Then the rain was getting reduced. They crowded to the huge door. The rain stopped. Then they were crowding at the huge door and the rain stopped. It was as if in the midst of a film concerning an avalanche, the vision or the appearance of the stopping of the rain and the appearance of the sun is compared to a film. It was like a film concerning an avalanche. Avalanche means sudden rush of snow and dirt to the side of on the side of the mountain. A tornado. Tornado means a sudden storm. A hurricane. Hurricane is also a violent storm. A volcanic eruption. A volcano erupting out. Something had first gone wrong. It was like something in the beginning it had gone wrong with the sound apparatus, and in the movie the sound apparatus has gone wrong. Like that it appeared first. Thus muffling and finally cutting off all noise. Finally all the noise was cutting off. all the blasts and repercussions and thunders, and then second ripped the film from the projector and inserted in its place a beautiful tropical slide which did not move or tremor. And finally, all the blast and repercussions and thunders, all the different kinds of sounds and effects, and then the film ripped out from the projector and inserted in its place a beautiful tropical slide, and all the bad sounds and then the interference and everything is gone, and finally the project inserted in its place a beautiful tropical slide. Then a beautiful slide appeared, which did not move or tremor. There was no shake, no tremor, nothing. It was very beautiful. The world ground to a standstill, and everything was to a standstill. The silence was so immense and unbelievable that you felt your ears had been stuffed or you had lost your hearing altogether. And everything was total silence, and you feel as if something was stuffed into your ears, and you had lost your hearing sense altogether, like that. Such was the silence. The children put their hands to their ears. The children were doubting whether they lost the sense of hearing. They they put their hand to their ears. They stood apart. They all stood apart. The door slid back, and the smell of the silent, waiting world came into them. Then the door slightly opened. The door slid back, and the smell of the silent. Here, the silence is described as having smell. Silent, waiting world came into them. They were waiting for this situation. The sun came out. See, for them it is a miracle, like, because the children, 9-year-old children are seeing the sun for the first time. See how wonderful it is. It was the color of flaming bronze, and it was very large. See how they compare it. It was the color of the sun was like flaming bronze, and it was very large. And the sky around it was blazing blue tile color. Then the sky around the sun was blazing in blue color. And the jungle burned with sunlight as the children, released from their spell, rushed out yelling into the springtime. Then the sunlight covered the forest, and all the children released from their spell. They were spellbound, but now they all are released from their spell, and they all rushed out yelling into the springtime. They made loud noise and they rushed out of their classroom. Now don't go too far, called the teacher after them. You have only 2 hours, you wouldn't want to get caught out. Then the teacher told her, don't go far away. You have only 2 hours. You wouldn't want to get caught out. You should not be trapped out. The children, but they were running and turning their faces up to the sky and feeling the sun on their cheeks like a warm iron. They were not listening the warning of the teacher. They were running out and they turned their face up to feel the sun and on their cheeks like a warm iron. They were taking off their jackets and they want to let the sun burn their arms. They removed their jackets and they wanted to feel the warmth of the sun. Oh, it's better than the sun lamps, isn't it? Much better. They feel so better. They feel that it is. They feel that it is better than the lamp. They stopped running and stood in the great jungle that covered Venus that grew, never stopped growing tumultuously. Even as you watched it, they stopped running and stood in the great jungle that covered Venus, that grew and never stopped growing. See, that jungle was growing because of the rain. They were standing there, tumultuously means violent turbulence. There was violent turbulence, disturbance. Even as though you watched it, it was a nest of octopi, clustering up great arms of flesh like weed, wavering, flowering in the brief spring. They are comparing it to the nest of an octopus. Clustering up great arms of flesh like weed. The octopus cluster its arms around the weed. No, it was like that. Wavering, flowering in the brief spring. And it was a brief spring. It was summer. It was very brief. It was the color of rubber and ash. This jungle from the many years without sun. It was the color. The forest was of the color of rubber and ash because so many years the trees did not see the sun. So its color changed. This jungle from the many years without sun. So if there is no sun, there is no greenery. So the trees were of the color of rubber and ash. It was the color of stones and white cheeses and ink, and it was the color of the moon. The color was not green because there was no sun for so many years. It was the color of stones and white cheeses and ink, and it was the color of the moon. The children lay out laughing on the jungle mattresses and heard it sigh and squeak under them, resilient and alive. The children lay out, they spread out, they were laughing and running in the jungle, on the jungle mattresses, and heard it sigh and squeak. They could hear different sounds in the forest. Them resilient and alive. Then those sounds in the forest made them resilient. Resilient means made them very strong and alive. They ran among the trees, they slipped and fell, they pushed each other, they played hide and seek and tag. But most of all, they squinted at the sun until the tears ran down their faces. They were running around trees and they were playing different games. They played, they slipped and fell, they pushed each other, they played hide and seek and they tagged and run. But most of all, they squinted at the sun. Most of all, they just looked at the sun without closing their eyes until the tears ran down their faces. They were staring at the sun without closing their eyes until their eyes were filled with tears. They put their hands up to that yellowness and that amazing blueness, and they breathed of the fresh air and listened to the silence which suspended them in a blessed sea of no sound and no motion. And they were experienced, they were amazed. And they put their hands up to the yellowness and that amazing blueness. The sky turned blue when the sun appeared and the rain stopped. And listened to the silence which suspended them in a blessed sea of no sound and no motion. They were listening to the silence. They were not making any noise. They were just listening and they were enjoying. They were suspended in a blessed sea of no sound and no motion. Then they looked at everything and savored everything. They looked at everything and savored. Savored means enjoyed everything. Then wildly, like animals escaped from their caves, they ran in shouting circles. They were running here and there like animals who were jumped out of their caves, escaped from their caves. And they ran in shouting circles. They ran for an hour and did not stop running. They could not stop running. They were that much excited. And then in the midst of their running, one of the girls wailed. They were running and playing. And in the midst of their enjoyment, one girl wailed. Everyone stopped. One girl made a noise and everyone stopped. The girl standing in the open held out her hand. "Oh, look," she said, trembling. Then the girl was standing in the open. She held her hand out. "Oh, look," she said, trembling. She was trembling. They came slowly to look at her open palm. Then everyone gathered to see what is there in her open palm. In the center of it, cupped and huge, was a single raindrop. Then in the midst, in the center of her arm, in the center of her cupped and huge palm, there was a single raindrop. So 2 hours passed so fast, and again raindrops are coming down. She began to cry looking at it. They glanced quietly at the sun. Then she looked at it and began to cry. They glanced quietly at the sun. Oh, because sun was about to disappear and it was about to rain. A few cold drops fell on their noses and their cheeks and their mouths. A few drops of rain fell on their cheeks and their mouths. The sun faded behind a stir of mist. Then the sun was fading in a stir of mist. A wind blew cold around them. Then there was a cold wind around them. They turned and started to walk back toward the unground house, their hands at their sides, their smiles vanishing away. Then they all turned and started to walk back toward the underground house, their hands at their sides, their smiles vanishing away. Now, children were feeling sad. Their smiles vanished. Their smiles disappeared. A boom of thunder startled them, and like leaves before a new hurricane, they trembled upon each other and ran. Then there was a boom of thunder. There was the sound of thunder, and thunder startled them, and like leaves before a new hurricane, then they all trembled upon each other and ran. They all ran back to their rooms. And it was like a new hurricane. The children ran back. Lightning struck 10 miles away, 5 miles away, a mile, a half mile. Then lightning started 10 miles away. Then it came closer, 5 miles away, a mile and a half mile. It came so close. The sky darkened into midnight in a flash. Then the sky darkened. There was no sun. And it was darkened into midnight in a flash. They stood in the doorway of the underground for a moment until it was raining hard. Then they were waiting at the doorway doorway of the underground for a moment until it was raining heavily. Then they closed the door and heard the gigantic sound of the rain falling in tons and avalanches everywhere and forever. Then they closed their door and they could hear the sound like avalanche. Avalanche means a large amount of snow and dust falling on the sides of hills. And they could hear the sound and rain falling in tons and avalanches everywhere and forever. Will it be 7 more years? That was their question. Another 7 more years they have to bear this heavy rain. Yes, 7. Then one of them gave a little cry. Margot. Then only they remembered Margot. Margot could not see the sun. What? She is still in the closet where we locked her. Then only they remembered that they have closed her in the closet. She was still there in the closet. She could not see the sun. Margot! They stood as if someone had driven them like so many stakes into the floor. Then they all felt so sad. They all stood as if so many stakes falling like so many stakes into the floor. They looked at each other and then looked away. They looked at each other. They felt very bad. They glanced out at the world that was raining down and raining steadily. Then they glanced out at the world. It was raining steadily. They could not meet each other's glances. Then they could not face each other's looks, each other's glances. Their faces were solemn and pale. Their faces became sad and pale. They looked at their hands and feet, their faces down. Now they were feeling sad. They were feeling remorse that they did not let Margot experience the sun. Margot, one of the girls said. Well, no one moved. One of the girls again remembered Margot, but nobody moved. Go on, whispered the girl. They walked slowly down the hall in the sound of cold rain. Then they slowly walked down the hall in the sound of cold rain. They turned through the doorway to the room in the sound of the storm and thunder, lightning on their faces, blue and terrible. Then they turned the doorway to the room in the sound of the storm and thunder, lightning on their faces, blue and terrible. They walked over the closet door slowly and stood by it. Then they walked towards the closet door and they stood by it. Behind the closet door was only silence. Margot was silent. She did not talk. She did not tell anything. It was utter silence there. They unlocked the door even more slowly and let Margot out. Then they unlocked the door even more slowly. Then they let Margot out. Then they allowed Margot to come out. The theme of this story is jealousy and bullying. Normally, children feel jealous of somebody different from them. And if somebody is more privileged than them, the children will be very jealous of them and they try to hurt them. Here, Margot is the victim of such jealousy and bullying. All children live in this planet. They are born and brought up in the planet Venus. But Margot came to this planet only 5 years ago. And she has experienced sun and its warmth and all. But these children, they experienced sun before 7 years. At that time, they were only 2 years. So they could not recollect anything. And they were not ready to believe what Margot says about the sun. And they did not let Margot to see the sun. They closed her in a room. And finally, when they saw the sun, they realized that what Margot was telling was true. And they felt guilty because they did not let Margot see the sun. And finally, when the sun disappeared, then only they realized that Margot was closed in the room and they felt bad. Appropriateness of title. The title is so suitable for this story because all the children are waiting for the appearance of the sun. So, the All Summer in a Day is an appropriate title for the story because the entire story revolves around a group of children eagerly waiting for the last 7 years to see the sun. So, the title is The Summer Time is Only 2 hours. The sun appears only for 2 hours in the planet Venus. So, the children experiences the all summer in a day for 2 hours. So the title is appropriate. Chronology. The entire action in the story has taken place in a day and in 2 places, that is inside the classroom and outside, that is in the forest and in the sunshine. And then the children were back in the class after the rain. So the unity of time, place, action have been maintained. Imagery. The author has used so many images to describe the planet Earth and Venus. And so many color imagery are also used. So remembering gold or yellow crayons, then the rain had washed the blueness of her eyes and the red from her lips and the yellow from her hair. So three colors are used as images. Then Then sound imagery, auditory imagery is also used to describe rain. Drum and gush of water, and a tattling drum, and then repercussions and thunders, and a boom of thunder startled them. These all auditory imagery is also used. Then irony. Irony is that Margot is the person who knows about the sun, and she was describing the sun to all the children, but they did not believe. But when the sun appeared, she missed the chance to see the sun. And finally, children were able to believe that what Margot told them was true. Metaphors. The author has used a number of metaphors to depict an image of life in Venus. So here, sun is a flower that blooms for just 1 hour. Then, she was an old photograph dusted from an album. And if she spoke, all her voice would be a ghost. These are metaphors. Then, the endless shaking down of clear bead necklaces upon the roof. Now similes, comparison. They turned on themselves like a feverish wheel, all tumbling spokes, feeling the sun on their cheeks like a warm iron. So sun is compared to a warm iron. Then whitely, like animals escaped from their caves, they ran and ran. Now hyperbole. Hyperbole is a technique used to describe in an over-exaggerated way. Here sun is described as a coin large enough to buy the world with. And the rain sound. Heard the gigantic sound of rain falling in tons and avalanches everywhere and forever. That's all. If you like this lesson, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you for watching. God bless.